When I was a range safety officer at my local shooting club, I actually unfortunately saw squibs all the time, especially from competition shooters that load on progressive style presses. In my opinion, progressive presses, especially automatic presses, are the number one cause of ammunition problems with reloaders. I never ever load hunting ammo on an auto press and I never will. I've only actually seen one squib load occur while out in the field hunting, and that was in the 1990s when I was a younger man. It happened to a friend's father who was using factory Remington ammo that must have had a low charge in it. He aimed his rifle at a really nice hog, pulled the trigger. We heard a little pop and he pulled his bolt. We looked in it and it appeared that the bullet was stuck about halfway down the barrel. And what happened next is going to shock you and amaze you. The old man grabbed another round out of his ammo box, pulled the bullet out of the case with pliers, emptied about half the powder out of it, and then that guy gently chambered the bulletless case back into the chamber while pointing it upward, closed it, and that man fired that case into the air, and that squib load actually left the barrel. My buddy's dad was extremely lucky that day, in my opinion. Never fire another case to blow a squib load out of your barrel. It's tempting, but just don't do it. But personally, I've only had one squib myself in my lifetime. And it was during, I believe it stemmed from the reloading process. I had about 50 pieces of prepped brass, and I was loading charge weights in them one by one. And halfway through this process, I grabbed an empty case to check the base to datum length on it because I'd forgot to do that earlier. And then I accidentally put that empty case in with the charged cases. And as you probably guessed, when I started seeding bullets, I put a bullet in the empty case. Luckily, the force of that primer alone without any powder in the case only had enough force to wedge that heavy 225 grain bullet just in the throat. And I was able to knock that bullet back out with a cleaning rod. When that round was fired, here's the funny part. When that round was fired, it made absolutely no noise at all. I thought I had a misfire. And it wasn't until that I ejected the brass out of the chamber and checked it and noticed it had a fired primer that I understood what had happened. And luckily, I was smart enough to pull the bolt out, look down the barrel before I fired another round. Squibs are extremely dangerous, not only when they happen, but what you do directly after they happen. In this video, I'll discuss ways to deal with and avoid a squib. Most squibs happen due to reloading mistakes during the hand loading process, but not all of them. As I pointed out in the previous chapter, when I gave you that story about my friend's dad who had the squib load, that was bad factory ammo. So bad factory ammunition could also result in a squib. A squib can also occur because of excessive cartridge overall length. If you really jam this bullet into the lands, then you maybe pull your bolt back to do a chamber check or something, then put the bolt back into battery to shoot, that bullet can get stuck in the lands. Then it can pull the bullet from the case when you pull the bolt back to do that chamber check. It can dump the powder charge into the magazine before you chamber the case back in. And, something like that can definitely create a squib load situation. Most people who are seriously injured by a squib event fired another bullet with a bullet still inside the barrel. And this usually leads to catastrophic gun failure, which can include blown barrels, exploding receivers, and bolts maybe being thrown back into the shooter's face. Squibs are especially dangerous in semi-auto firearms because the squib case might eject out and you can easily send another round down the tube with the squib in the barrel. Also, never ever trust a misfire in a revolver. I've seen a lot of that happen. So it's good not to trust misfires. When a squib happens, if your case was empty or almost completely empty, and all you experienced was basically primer ignition, those bullets are usually jammed at the very beginning of the lands, and they can usually be knocked out with just a common cleaning rod. What I like to do is I like to put some Croil down the barrel, let it sit for a few minutes, and then just knock that bullet out. If it's jammed tightly, maybe, a little bit further up, I use a solid metal rod with a flat end on it, and what I like to do is put some tape around it so it centers in the bore and just tap that bullet out of there. Never, ever use a wooden dowel to tap bullets out. The wood will splinter, at least that's what I've experienced, or get jammed in the barrel, and make the problem a lot worse than it already is. Always use a solid metal rod to do that. And if you had more powder in the case when the squib happened, the bullet might be jammed really deep into the barrel, maybe halfway down the barrel, and you'll need to take it to a gunsmith who will use various techniques to get that bullet out. But, I've seen barrels where squib removal was just downright impossible. And sometimes there's more than one bullet in there. If you have a threaded barrel on the end and know how to use the grease trick where you fabricate your own grease fitting, thread it onto the barrel and use a grease gun to get it out, you could give that a try. I've seen it used several times with kind of mixed results, but whatever you do, never try to blow that squib out with a dummy case. When something doesn't seem right with your ammunition or your firearm, trust your gut and stop what you're doing immediately. After my squib incident, I changed my entire reloading technique. The root cause of 99% of squibs is in the reloading process, and it usually involves a missing or inadequate powder charge. Automatic or progressive loading machines are the main reason that this happens that I've usually seen. The biggest precaution you can take is to weigh all of your loaded rounds to make sure that you didn't accidentally skip a powder charge while you were loading. It might even make sense to weigh your factory ammunition as well. And lastly, make sure that your loads have enough neck tension to hold that bullet pretty good, and that your cartridge overall length isn't so excessive that you're forcing bullets into the lands. In the last chapter, I stated that if anything doesn't seem right with your firearm or your ammunition, stop what you're doing immediately. This simple act of patience has saved many eyes, hands, and lives. With semi-auto firearms, we like to train like we're a gunfighter and do lightning fast clearance drills to get another shot on target. This is where I've actually seen firearms explode, especially during competitions. If your case doesn't eject from a semi-auto gun, it could be a squib load and you ignored it to look cool. I know we've all been to pistol classes and we've been taught, what is that, a type 1 malfunction where you pull the trigger and nothing happens and you do your tack rack bang. Well, what if you pulled that trigger, it was a squib load, and you went tap rack bang? Well, here's a video of a gun blowing up in such a scenario when a shooter ignored a squib load. Also, with modern noise canceling hearing protection that we wear nowadays, it's often difficult to hear the difference between a squib round and a good round. If you're shooting targets and the bullet doesn't make a hole in the paper, check your barrel. If you pull the trigger and recoil seems kind of non-existent, check your barrel. My point is never trust a misfire. Well, I hope you found this video informative and entertaining. Thank you for watching, and as always, good hunting.